Okay, we're live.
Great, thanks. Okay, thank you everyone for coming to the first call was the 0th call, so this is the first call. And it's been rebranded as the Eth2.0 implementers call because it encompasses a lot more than just sharding. I guess some people would say to change it to Shasper, although I haven't fully adopted that term in my lexicon yet. Cool, so you'll have the agenda. Is there anyone new here that wants an intro? Zach is here from QuickBlocks. He's interested in doing some network simulation stuff, but we can talk about that later. Yeah, I think everyone else was here last time.
Hey guys.
Hey Farron. Oh yeah, cool.
Labs, and I am based in SF, so happy to be in this meeting.
Great. And Alexi, you weren't here, right?
I wasn't in the first meeting. I was traveling, but yes, hello. But I was at the workshop in Berlin, the one in June. Yes.
Yes. Well, great. We can go ahead and get started. The first part of the agenda is client updates. If we want to just go around and give an update on what's been going on our various clients.
Okay, so you're going to do one if he asks any of them?
I can start. I've been working on the beacon chain Python kind of proof of concept implementation. The past couple of days, I finished the V2.1 spec, and at the same time have been working with Vitalik, editing the spec as we found various bugs and little issues and shaways, and doing a review on that. There's a couple of minor things that have been added to the spec that are not represented in this PR now, but the PR is generally up to snuff, and we're going to get that merged probably in the next day or so. Does someone from Prismatic Labs want to give an update?
Yeah, sure. I can give an update. We have completely deprecated the old sharding management contract within our client code base. So we have implemented a Beacon node gRPC server as a service alongside with gRPC client for the sharding client. And Beacon node, so the sharding client and the Beacon node are communicate effectively. We have updated our proposer package within the sharding client to basically to be able to interact with the Beacon chain via the RPC method. Basically, the proposal can be shuffled and determine which height that it can propose. And then we also have Beacon node simulating blocks and epoch transition. And then the sharding client can listen to them, and then sharding client can use this gRPC method to determine when it can become a proposer or when it can become a tester. So then after that, we basically verify that the validators can be successfully selected to propose for the next slot using this gRPC stream. We also work on aligning our code base with the 2.1 spec. So we basically updated the block and then the active state, and then the crystallized state field. We're using the latest shuffling, and then the cutoff algorithm, and then the helper functions. We also open up a Discord server, which is a bridge with the GitHub chat room. So feel free to join us there, and the link is in our GitHub. And then in terms of future work, we plan to work on 4-choice rule next.
Great. Sounds like excellent progress. How about someone from Lighthouse?
Hey, that'll be me. So we spent most of the time sort of playing around with the shuffling algorithm. We can talk about that later. I built like a little sandbox to sort of mess around with different shuffling algorithms and see how they compare in speed and output. Just been kind of building out sort of the ancillary stuff like databases and threading models and stuff like that. Sort of waiting for the reference implementation to get a lot of the state transition stuff through. That's most of it from my end. We can talk about the shuffling stuff later, I imagine.
Yeah, let's table the shuffling stuff until after the updates, but happy to dig in. Great, thanks. How about, is anyone from Parity here? I don't think so. How about Harmony?
We are working on proposers and processing stuff somewhere in between the middle and the end of the progress.
Morning.
If things will go as they are going now, then
it's muted, so you guys don't have to be silent. It's fine. I won't be speaking at all, so it's going to be muted the whole time.
By the end of the next week. We are trying to follow the spec in those points that are well defined by the spec, and try to keep it simple for those that are not defined. Like, for example, for initial validators committee, we decided to just use the first registered validator as a committee that's eligible to make first bunch of blocks. Yeah. So that's it for now.
Great. Ben or someone from Pegasus want to give an update?
Yeah, sure. I'll give you the practical update, which is in terms of team building and stuff, we've made good progress. So Olivier joined a couple of weeks ago. He was on this call. I think it's pretty much his first day. He's been working at this VDF workshop with Justin the last few days. And we've got 2 more coming on board in the next month. So we'll finally be able to make some substantial contributions. I trust. So I'll hand over to Nicolas for the research update, if that's okay.
We're working hard on supporting multiple VMs in order to benchmark.
Yes, it is. So we're going to focus the next 2 weeks on Casper, especially the new version that was published by Vitalik 2 weeks ago. Our target being able to start the implementation when the team will be there in September. So we would like to get a deep understanding of the new versions for the next 2 weeks. That's our plan. And that's it for me.
Great, sounds good. How about someone from Nimbus status?
That would be me. So in the past 2 weeks, I worked a bit on the message serialization to try to add a schema to Vitalik's simple serialize and see how hard it would be to implement that in NIM. So
and then you said
I put
after that's done, we can work on a prototype,
everything on the
sharding, but that's
ETH research forum. Basically, a schema with the message is a bit too heavy, I think. And also, I focused on BLS implementation. I continued using the Milagro library, and it's still we still have some bug, but I've also put a long forum post with all kind of tips and thing you must be aware of when you implement BLS through Milagro or any other library. Otherwise, it's not Eth2.0, but more Eth1.0. So we had some PR on NIM and Nimbus. And also we can now sync with the proof of work blockchain, at least the first early blocks. So progress, but on Eth1.0.
Can you share that blog post with us?
I have no idea.
Later.
Sorry, the blog post about BLS implementation?
Yes. Any update from Yoazim?
Hey, Danny. Yeah, quick update from our side. So obviously no sort of sharding related progress at the moment. We're mostly working on tooling for developing and deploying smart contracts in 2 stacks, which is Rust and assembly script, primarily Rust. We're also working on adding support for multiple VMs into Hera, which is our sort of sandwich layer that connects to CPP Ethereum and Geth as well. And when that work is done, we can begin working on an execution engine prototype for sharding phase 2 or whatever phase that is now.
Great. And I think I forgot the Lodestar chain safe systems.
So we've been working on the JavaScript implementation of the beacon chain. So right now we're working on implementing the state transition functions, and we've been directed by Mami on a pure JS implementation of BLS signatures that we've been looking at. We're most likely going to go with that in the near future, even though it's not really one-to-one with the Python implementation, but it's a really good start. Within the next 2 weeks, we're also going to start implementing Gossip Sub in JavaScript to start the P2P layer. And we've also started doing our own RNG research to help along with the research that Vitalik and Justin have been working on and on choosing committee sets and proposers.
Great. Any updates from research?
From the sharding P2P POC side, we already had the basic functionalities available, so we can let the node join and leave and broadcast messages and receive something and synchronize with other nodes. But the content validation is not finished yet, so we'll keep working on it. And we also had the Docker image available, and we work on open tracing to we surveyed open tracing and used the app dash as the tracer and collector. And we met some problems, so there are some issues about the GX. It is a package management tool for IPFS, and some issue related to the P2P, and we reported it and get it fixed. And we also has more documents, so we there are currently some README file and the document in the PR and will be merged soon. And currently we're doing the refactoring and restructuring because the previous code is not so modular. So we'll make it more readable and yeah, and understandable. Yeah, and more debugging because there are still some issues. Not sure if it is on the P2P side, but we will find it out. And to do in the next 2 weeks, we will focus more on communicate our current code with the Python side. So because we want a workable program that can communicate with the Python side, so that we can do some experiment in the Python side. And we will also survey more about the deployment tools and testing tools. And that's my update. Yeah. Thanks.
Excellent. I'm getting bunch of typing sounds. If you're not speaking, can you please mute? Actually, so I had carved out P2P research in a different part of the agenda, but I think it makes sense right here. Yannick, do you want to give us an update on your network simulation?
Yes, sure. Thank you. First, maybe a little bit of background. My goal here is to compare different gossip and discovery protocols and see how they perform, and if they are suitable for us, and also maybe what requirements they have on the nodes in the network regarding latency and throughput, for example, so that eventually we can choose the best one from all the options we have. And to do that, I'm using a framework called Omnet. It's a C++ framework for discrete event simulations. So there's actually no real networking going on. Everything is running on simulated on a single machine, which of course has the disadvantage that it's a little bit less realistic. But what you get for that is that you can basically scale as much as you like. You can add as many nodes as you like, and you pay for that only by simulation time. And I've done some performance tests. That was the first thing I did. And it seems to be possible to run simulations with up to 100,000 nodes, which is very nice because I think that's roughly the size that we're trying, or roughly the number of validators we're trying to support. Yeah, and I got some first results. First, I looked into Episub, which is basically the proposed successor of GossipSub, proposed by the libp2p team. It's still only specified. There's no implementation yet. So I implemented in my simulation, and what I looked at is the number of nodes, of hops it takes for a message to propagate through the network or to reach more than 99% of the network. And unfortunately, the result I got was a bit negative. The number is quite large. It takes something between 20 and 40 hops to reach to propagate through the network for network sizes of 5,000 to 20,000 nodes. And I think that number is too large to support the short block times we want to have, and therefore I just think we should not use this Episub, at least not in its current state. In the spec, they mentioned that they have some optimizations in mind, but they're not there yet. So when they do, we have to, of course, revisit that. But for now, I think it's not a good idea. Yeah.
Next steps. How it's taking? Why it's taking that many hops? Or do you have any theories?
Yes, I think that's just the idea behind the protocol that you. I mean, it's not a bad protocol. It's just makes a trade-off which is not suitable for us. And the idea is to basically trade efficiency for propagation time. So it takes, while it takes a lot of hops, it takes very few messages. To do that.
I see. Okay. There's a lot fewer redundant messages being passed around.
Yes, exactly.
And it was named Episub?
Episub, yeah. It used to be called GossipSub. It had the same name as the old protocol, but now they've renamed it to Episub.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and now after that, I'm right now looking into GossipSub and try to look at the same metrics and see what I get there. Yep, that's my update. Thank you.
Awesome. So I want to introduce Zach from Whiteblock. Zach and I have been talking for a number of months. He was actually going to begin to do some network simulation work on the FFG contract side of things. He's been eager to help out. I know he's been spending some time getting familiar with the research this week, and I wanted to let him just kind of give an idea of what he's interested in doing, so that we can talk about it a little bit now, or maybe offline. Y'all can give him a hand. Cool. So Zach.
Yeah. Hey, how's it going? Yeah, I think it's important to also clarify that unlike Yannick's work, we're actually capable of emulating network behaviors and activities, so we can like functionally replicate that activity in like real time with like accuracy, so you can realistically observe performance. So we spent the past week going through the code in the sharding P2P POC repo, and we made some changes and made some pull requests, and I opened an issue, number 43, for testing methodology that kind of provides like a high-level overview of what we're capable of doing and what I think would be the most relevant to this particular use case. So I just wanted to put something out there so I could get the ball rolling, because I think like the methodology and the test cases should be established using, community input and not just like dictated by me and what I think is best. So I just want to be the most useful. So we got everything running and it works. And then we also fixed the dev build. The the dev build wasn't working. There were some issues that we addressed, and we also got it running on Mac. It wasn't able to run on in a OS X environment, but we fixed that. So
can you give us a couple examples of some of the metrics you might be able to test?
Yeah. So I listed them all out on this thing. So like the ability, primarily the ability to like observe the ability for like validators to subscribe to new topics and send and receive messages pertaining to that topic in like the allotted amount of time. So some things that we would do is like number of nodes, latency between those nodes, what's the maximum amount of network latency that each individual node can tolerate before performance begins to degrade. And what are the security implications of that? Like latency between shards, intermittent blackout conditions with like high degrees of packet loss or bandwidth constraints, adding and removing nodes at random, and adding and removing them at set intervals, introducing a high volume of nodes simultaneously. We could also like test and observe like partition tolerance, like when segments of nodes are prevented from communicating with each other, and just also the performance of like sending and receiving messages within a set period of times and repeat. So we could essentially stress test it, and also the process of like joining and leaving shards, like subscribing and connecting to other nodes with the shard and synchronizing collations and shard preference tables and unsubscribing. So pretty much all of those practical functions we can test at scale and test them realistically because they would actually be performing. So we do it in our network. We actually observe them perform in real time, real life. So we're not really using simulations, which are like mathematical assumptions. We're like functionally observing these behaviors and these performances. So I think that's about it right there. But if you guys want to check out this testing methodology that I posted, I mean, it's just a high level document to just communicate what we've done so far. We've only been actually working on this for like the past week or so. But I'm assigning a couple of guys from my team to help out on this. So feel free to give us whatever you got. And we can run all of these tests. And so since they'll be run locally in our lab, we could also provide access to the test network to any of you guys. If you want to access it via like SSH or something like that, we'll set you up with an account so you can come in and run your own tests if you want. We'll be willing to donate that to the cause. So just let me know what you guys would think is best. And if you want to see like a demo or like check it out or something like that, or have any other questions, we could just talk about that offline unless you have anything pressing right now.
Great, that sounds like really, really interesting testing. Does anybody that's been working on testing research or otherwise have any questions for Zach right now? Okay.
Maybe not a question, but more like a suggestion. It might make sense because now we have quite a few number of implementations already to test various implementations together in the same network. Would that be possible?
Yeah. Anyone, if you'd like to collaborate, because I checked out your work as well, and I think that we could actually implement a lot of the same flow, but within an emulation rather than a simulation. So you're talking, like earlier you mentioned like how it's not entirely realistic because it's a simulation. Well, now we can implement that same workflow within an actual emulation. So that way we'll see and observe performance with high accuracy that's very similar to what it would, how it would be in the real world. So, yeah. So.
Yeah, I'm not talking about my simulations, but rather like, and the way I understand is that you take like an existing client implementations and just put it in the network and let it run 100 times or something.
Yeah, whatever you want to configure it for. So we kind of have functionality as like Chef or something like that. We can like establish an automated workflow.
But for now, you only use the networking POC.
Yeah, that's the one we started out with.
But maybe it would be nice to try different implementations. For example, I don't know.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, let's do whatever we can. You know, whatever you guys want to throw at it. You know, and we could set up a network a permission network that anyone can access if you guys want to run like some of your own tests at this scale.
Cool. I would definitely be keen for that once we're able to sync with other nodes.
Yeah.
And once we have so this can be useful for the kind of proof of concept stuff, but this might also be when we actually have a number of beacon chain clients, we can do other types of simulations on actual clients rather than just these kind of proof of concept testing.
Definitely.
Cool. Okay, I skipped over a little bit of the research updates because we go into the P2P stuff. Vitalik, do you have anything that you'd like to update us on?
On the research side, not that much. Well, so far it's been mostly refinements to the spec. So I think let's see, on the main changes that that have happened to the spec in the last couple of weeks pretty much have, I think, been like fairly small modifications, right? Like the fork choice rule is basically the same. And I've been looking into some kind of blue sky, more speculative things around like 51% mitigation and data availability checking for sharding, but that's not really relevant to kind of very short-term client development.
Right.
But like it probably will become relevant at some point when we start actually building out the sharding side and building the sharding light client code. So though it's not clear, it'll be in the very first version of it.
Got it. And I know on the RNG VDF side of things, Justin is he's waiting on kind of a detailed hardware analysis, like real world analysis of hardware and potential attacks. And that's going to be, we have that report, we're going to be able to make more clear decisions on the RNG design. Hopefully, probably in the next 3 or 4 weeks, we'll have that report. All right, cool. Research. So back to the P2P stuff. Paul had mentioned that he wanted to talk about the beacon chain wire protocol. Paul, do you want to give a high level on that?
Yeah, sure. I've just been starting to play around pushing packets around the network. And I guess maybe it might be interesting to hear from Prismatic Labs what they're doing. I mean, I guess the easiest thing to be would just be kind of like copy the 1.0 wire protocol now. But I just kind of wanted to raise it because it's having that thing specified is something on my horizon. Do Prismatic want to maybe mention what they're doing in that way?
Hey, Preston here from Prismatic. So what we're doing right now is we're until we kind of figure out what messaging format we want to use, we're just using protocol buffers because as long as it's a single client implementation and we trust the packets from ourselves, like it's going to work. So we are aligned on the same idea that we need to like figure out what the format's going to be, but right now we're just using protocol buffers.
Okay, cool. Do you have different types of messages?
Hey, Vitalik, can you mute? Thanks.
Yeah, do you have like different types of messages? Like blocks, get blocks, like like a one little byte to have specific types of messages?
Yeah, so we've defined specific messages for, I guess, each topic. So all of our communication is going through like gossip sub or flood sub topics, and so each topic has its own message type that's associated with it. So if you're doing like asking for a block, then you're sending like a get block request and getting a different message back, which is a get block response or just a block. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'll just go poking around in yours and try and follow your lead then. Thanks.
Yep.
As for the Eth2.0 wire protocol, are there issues with that wire protocol? Can it conform to what we need? Does anybody have familiarity with the Eth2.0 wire protocol to speak to it?
Basically, we were thinking about the same way as Paul just mentioned, and from now, I don't see any issues in using Eth2.0 protocol for beacon chain data structures. So it's gonna be pretty straightforward.
I guess we'll have to change some stuff because the current wire protocol talks about difficulty and these things that aren't going to be suitable to this chain.
Yeah, sure, but I think it's gonna be.
When we start talking about the wire protocol, it might also make sense to start thinking about denial of service resistance. Because like that's one thing that proof of work does fairly easily, and we should probably try to think about like whether or not, or like how we would do that for the proof of stake protocol. Would there be things that we would want to modify and so forth?
And the denial of service easy. Sorry, I'm getting on the proof of work. Because
no, I mean the denial of service attacks consisting of like sending proof of stake blocks that are malformatted in some way that just wastes the target's time.
I see.
I'm like slightly worried about this because we have these big hulking BLS signatures that all take. Well, I mean, I guess it's not that bad if their size is bounded, but once their size goes up to like a few hundred each, I guess it's still doable, but like it's still worth having in the back of our minds.
So I was talking to some of the Dfinity people last weekend, and they're doing they're using zero knowledge proofs to prove that you were part of the validator set to the network, but without revealing who or what your actual identity is. And this is to allow for some sort of like privileged network. So like I can privilege listening and receiving, or listening and listening to and forwarding packets or messages from known validators or from people that have proved that they're validators. Would that sort of solution fit the bill of resisting the denial of service stuff?
Well, I think it's if this proof can be replicated somehow, then it sort of defeats the purpose, I think. Like if you produce the proof once and you can use it multiple times.
Yeah,
I think the idea would be that you would kind of weave the proof in with whatever like set of messages that you're making, which seems like sort of something that you should be able to do with a like the standard schemes. I guess the main problem with that though is the overhead.
Yeah, I think they're using proposed bulletproofs.
Well, actually, no. I think so. Here you can amortize it, right? So you can have a scheme that basically says when you make a proof, you commit inside of that proof. Actually, no. Well, if you want to do this, right, when you make a proof, like inside of that proof, you would commit to a Merkle root, and then for any message, you would like reveal a Merkle branch, and that way you can make each proof count for like n messages. But you don't necessarily need to do that because like what you do is the point of the proof is to basically prove that some particular public key, like some newly generated special purpose public key, is owned by the same entity that also owns one of the some unknown one of big validator public keys, and then that you can trust messages from that special purpose public key once you've verified the proof once.
Right, I see. Interesting. Well, it's a.
Would it be enough to do this per connection in the peer-to-peer layer?
I would say probably.
Yeah, I think it's definitely an interesting enough solution to examine over the coming weeks. I'll dig into it a little bit.
Yeah, you probably want to keep those separate, like your validator key and the key that you're using to sign P2P messages, because they might be like in different processes.
Oh, what was that, Paul?
Sorry, I just kind of figured out after I said it. I was just saying you'd want to keep your main validating key pretty far away from your P2P message signing key. But I think we were just talking about, like, you know, creating sub-signatures or something. So just discard that.
I see. Okay, any more comments on wire protocol or DOS issues around P2P messages?
I guess just to sum up, maybe I'll just start poking through Prismatic Lab stuff, and then I'll also try and use the existing wire protocol, and I'll do my best to document it so we've got something to start from.
Excellent. Okay, so we have the message serialization. I know there's been at least a mild amount of chatter about that since our last call. Does anybody want to discuss that? I have not been keeping up with it, so I am not the person to give an update on that.
I guess I can say something. I've been looking into it a little bit. I keep meaning to run like some comparisons between different serialization formats and how long they take, and the message size on the network and stuff like that. But I haven't got around to it. I plan to though. But I'm kind of liking the idea of these like infinitely times faster algorithms, where it's like you can basically go straight from the network into your database without encoding and decoding. It seems appealing. But I have to go kind of check into those. And I'm in favor of SSZ personally, for simple serialized for consensus layer stuff, because I think it's just really simple.
When you say SSZ, like, I think I accidentally made two versions that I both called simple serialized, where one is basically like a very simplified version of RLP, where the length prefix is always 3 bytes, and the other is the thing where things that are constant size, like or like everything is typed, and things that are constant size map to a constant byte position. So which one of the two were you talking about?
Yeah, I was talking about I noticed. Sorry, do you mind muting on your own, Vitalik? Thanks. There's just a bit of echo. Yeah, I noticed. I think the Eth research one in the Eth research GitHub, the older one, that's the one I've kind of been ignoring along with the newer one, because I figured that was, just newer.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I've got it in Rust doing encoding, but I haven't done decoding yet.
Cool. Okay, well, we can continue to think about message serialization. It's not super immediately pressing, but something we should come to agreement on over the next few meetings. Okay, cool. So I think we've discussed everything through 4. Has anyone given any thought to bootstrapping the initial validator set? It's not something we need to immediately come to a consensus on today, but it's something that we need to figure out at some point. So the idea is, how do we have our initial validator set in, I guess, our Genesis block in the beacon chain? There's kind of a chicken and egg problem, especially because we were discussing having the beacon chain validating all of the incoming data from the validators. So like validating their existence of the signature, what's it called? The BLS rogue key attack stuff. But if you don't have an initial validator set to validate these incoming messages, you don't. And there's issues there. I know a number of chains are kind of dealing with this problem, or at least from like a first, they're not necessarily porting from an existing chain, but they do have to deal with the Genesis block problem. So it'd probably be interesting to look at what other people are doing. But does anybody have any immediate thoughts on this issue?
Right now at Prismatic Lab, we just initialize a bunch of validators upon the creation of the new chain, but we're discussing on Discord about having like a config JSON file to load from.
Right, so that would, in practice, that would involve some sort of enshrined initial validator set.
Yeah.
Right.
Another approach would okay, so another approach would be to do what the Ethereum did in the beginning, to use some sort of test net to seed the Genesis block.
Well, Ethereum did not use a testnet to seed the Genesis block, right? Well, the way Ethereum seeded the Genesis block is that basically there was a Python script that anyone could run, which would scan the Bitcoin blockchain and check who participated in the sale and automatically assign them ETH. So, I mean, if that's what we want to do, that's probably actually a totally fine approach as well.
Right. So the idea would hear about how
yeah.
So the idea would be to have the some sort of registration contract that would broadcast the data via receipts and have that open for someone and run scripts on it.
Yeah, basically, like it's exactly the same, or it's like fairly isomorphic to the kind of Bitcoin to Ethereum process.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So it'd be, you'd have a start and end date in which people can initially register. Then you'd
right.
Then you'd
and then you don't necessarily need to have an end date, because you could say that like, oh, when we enable the feature for validator rotation, then everyone after the end date will get included as well, or something.
Yes, I see. Cool. Do you imagine in the launch process to have a fixed validator set for some amount of time before flipping a bit?
I don't know. I feel like that depends on like how fast development goes, on the different sides.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think that's a tentatively reasonable approach. And so in terms of development, just think about the Genesis block as having an initial validator set. Cool. Okay, so quickly, we discussed last time about having some sort of pre-Defcon sharding meetup. So I can't remember the exact date of Defcon, but a day or two before that. Status has a space for their hackathon. There's a potential that there might be some space there. If anyone from Status has any thoughts on that at this moment, you can share.
Yeah, so we've discussed it internally, and given the hackathon and other things happening at the venue, the best date for us would be Friday the 26th, which places us a couple of days before the Defcon event itself. I also wanted to check with the group how much time we would need. Is it a day, half day, more or less?
Anybody have any thoughts on how long? I guess we've in the past. I guess in Berlin we had 3 days of client stuff, 1 day of sharding stuff. We got a lot done, although the client day has also had sharding related things. And we're also going to be at Defcon for many days. And if you're there on the 26th, you'll probably be there for a few days before Defcon. I would lean towards a day and not do multiple days on this thing. Does anybody, but a good long day of gathering. Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
I think. Yep.
Yeah.
Of the meetup, is it more just communication of knowledge? Is it a chance for people to ask the research team questions? To be helpful to understand that before trying to figure out how much time we might need.
Yeah, you're right. I imagine kind of a long form version of this in which we can dig deeper into some of the things that maybe in the meetings we're like, okay, this is what's going on, but we haven't really like thought about it all the way through. This is probably a good time to catch everyone up, meet everyone, and kind of facilitate collaboration on some of the things that we have been meaning to dig deeper into, and some things that maybe we've been talking about on the internet, but we haven't come to full agreement on. So, you know, updates, some sort of like research Q&A, and then maybe a few things that we specifically want to spend some time digging deep into to get progress on. That's just off the top of my head what I think would be useful. Does anybody have other comments on that?
Would it be in the format of the previous meetup where everybody went through their client updates and there was a research update and was filmed and there were notes afterwards? Or is it more just amongst us and then we're posting notes at the end of it?
In terms of like sharing a stream?
Yes.
We could stream it. I don't know, but if we have the resources to do so, I don't see why not at least record it. But definitely notes after. Can people realistically get to Prague a few days before Defcon? Does Defcon start the 29th? Does anybody have the date on that offhand?
It's the 30th through to the 2nd.
Right. So that's a reason. That's like, you know, are people going to be in Europe? Are people going to be in Prague that much earlier than Defcon? Okay. So there would be people in Europe and close to Prague. So that's promising, I think.
Yeah, that timing is kind of perfect for us because it's like a dead zone between Web3 and Defcon. Yeah, I'm sure we could fill it with beer, but you know, good to be productive.
Yeah, there's also the Fellowship of Ethereum Magicians meetup happening, I think, around the 26th, 27th, maybe. I don't have the latest dates on that, but that's going on as well.
Okay. Well, I think one day is reasonable, and I think the 26th is probably reasonable for at least a good representation. Why don't we, Jacek, we can kind of take that offline and check on some of the other events and see if this will start to make sense for us, okay? And there is space in the venue?
Yeah, we should be able to get space for, well, at least a limited amount of people, like not hundreds, but something along the lines of Berlin should be fine.
Great. Okay, cool. Well, we'll figure that out a little bit more over the coming few weeks.
I think some amount of knowledge sharing might be interesting, that people present what they've been researching as well. I would at least be interested in having a short section on that. But compared to Berlin, I agree with most here that more focus on discussion and solving issues would be interesting as well.
Cool. Okay. So we're at that part of the meeting where anyone can talk about anything that wasn't on the agenda that is pressing or interesting or questions or whatever.
Yeah, I might just bring up the shuffling algorithm. I was playing around with that, and I think it's.
I totally forgot about that.
That's all right, man. So, yeah, I made an issue. It's number 57. It's just about like there's a modulo bias in it, and it's doing an extra iteration. So if you get a chance to have a look at that, it'd be good to know.
That's sorry, issue 57 of what repo?
Sorry, Beacon Chain. I made a little like on our GitHub. There's a link in that issue to like a little sandbox I made just to like that I was using when I was jigging around with shuffling algorithms. So if anybody,
yep, I see it.
Yep. If if anybody fancies playing around with shuffling, then that's a place for it. Yeah, so it'd be cool just to get some feedback on that.
I could probably look at it right now.
Yeah, you probably want to skip down to the bottom, Vitalik. Most of the top is just like introduction that you already know.
Yo, hold on. Doesn't my code already do the filtering for modulo bias that you talk about?
Yeah, like, it does it, and that's how I came across it. But it filters for the odd results based on the entire list size. It doesn't filter them out based on the remaining amount, because that's the range that you're
or hold on. Oh no, I think I figured out. It's a typo. It's not supposed to be if line list is less than rand max. It's supposed to be if m is less than rand max. There, that's it. It was a typo.
Oh yeah, cool. And I think the rand max needs to be dropped down inside the loop too.
Why? No, line list is static.
Oh yeah, let me check.
Yeah.
No, rand max changes based on remaining. Not it doesn't stay static to the list size, I believe.
Oh yes, you're right. Yes, and modern. You're very right there. There we go. Or actually, no, that's technically the wrong code.
Did you just update it somewhere?
There. Yep, I updated it straight in the 2.1 spec.
Oh yeah, cool. I made a reference implementation in that shuffling repo that is slower, but it kind of separates the RNG and the shuffle out into separate components, just to make it easy for me to understand. And I got those two matching, so I think it's right. But I've been wrong before.
Okay. Yeah, ultimately we'll just have special purpose tests for this, and we'll make sure it matches up.
Yeah, cool. And for the other implementers too, the little shuffling sandbox thing I have, it'll output references. It'll output a shuffled array given a seed. And in the README, there's a couple of them. So you can use that to test, if you want to just put a test in there with your array versus that one and see if it matches. And that's an easy way to do it, to save you pulling apart the beacon chain implementation.
One thing I wanted to ask about is, have we talked about the testing at all, and consensus testing the beacon chain?
We have not.
Okay.
I know it was brought up briefly last time, but we were just a little too early. But if you have some thoughts on that, please.
Well, and I feel like since we have two implementations that are basically running a full beacon chain, we can, and it probably is too early to keep expecting consensus, but there's the proposed testing laying spec that I had made a few days ago, and I thought I'd bring this up and see is that basically the idea is here. Let's see if I can throw it into the chat. Wait, no, not that. Sorry. Wait, what? Is it? Oh, that's what it is. The idea is it's basically a way that would allow us to write tests much more quickly and have clients automatically validate them.
We actually started building out the beacon chain on our platform yesterday. I could share those results with you guys once we get it up and running, if you want us to help tackle the testing aspect.
Sure. I guess the thing I'm asking right now is for people to look at that doc and see if it's an approach that makes sense, and if it is, then it would make sense to start that part of the implementation should be an implementation of interpreting the tests and running them.
Yeah. So the link that Vitalik just shared is a testing lang where we can specify, you know, the creation of blocks, the attestation of blocks and things, and kind of check on the fork choice and various high-level components of the beacon chain.
If we have a client, we can use this as a reference for a configuration file that'll allow us to create a configuration file to automate a lot of the workflow.
Cool. So homework, take a look at that that testing thing and see if it makes sense and if it's expressive at least enough to start in you know, expressing the different states of the beacon chain. That's something that we'll be implementing in the Python probably over the next week or so.
Should we just share any results in the repo?
Share what results?
Like our evaluation.
Yeah, you can. I'll make an issue about this testing lang in the beacon chain repo, and people can comment on that, or we can also talk in the sharding getter.
Okay, cool.
Guys, I have an idea on initial validator set. We can take a proof of work block and get all validators that were registered before that block, and then use a hash of that block as a seed for shuffling process, and finally get the initial validator set. And we can just put this block hash into Genesis or beacon chain, and that should be okay. So it's just a raw idea, rough.
Luke, can you mute? Okay, so the idea is to have the validator set before some block hash, and then at that final block hash, use that block hash as the seed of the initial shuffling.
Yeah, so we can seed initial set with just some a hash of some proof of work chain block. So that's the idea.
At some predetermined height.
Yeah, and we can choose that block randomly.
Yeah, I think that's probably a reasonable approach to seed the randomness, rather than using, you know, 0.
Surely you could just throw random commitments when you register in the registration contract or whatever that is instead?
If we go with that approach, then yes, you could do the XOR of all the random commitments, which would require a little less coordination on grabbing a specific block. Both I think are reasonable. Random is very likely, but there's the RNG still a little bit up in the air. Okay. Anything else? Any other thoughts, comments, questions, concerns? Great. Okay, next meeting. So are we, I wasn't the last core dev call. Is there a core dev call 1 week from tomorrow? Does anybody know? They didn't push it off, right? Great, then let's plan on doing another one of these 1 week from today. I will create an issue. Did everyone see the new Eth2.0 PM repo? Where this is all belongs. I shared the link a couple times in the getter. So it'll exist there. I am it's probably gonna take me a couple days to get these notes up, but I'll get the notes up, shared with all the links, and I'll put up a tentative agenda and we can rally around an agenda for 2 weeks from now. Until then, plenty of work going on in various Gitter channels and repos. Exciting stuff. Thanks everyone for coming. I'll talk to you all soon.
Thanks, Danny. That was 2 weeks from now, is that right? Sorry?
Yes, the current plan is to meet 2 weeks from today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.